Hello, and welcome to the turbulent world with me, James M. Dorsey, as your host. A far right pro Israel think tank has put flesh on suspicions that Israel is seeking to weaken the government of President Ahmed al-Sharaa, if not break up Syria as a nation state. The Philadelphia based Middle East Forum revived a years old call for a freedom corridor that would link the Druze community in southern Syria with the Kurds in the north. The forum's call came as senior Israeli and Syrian officials negotiate security arrangements aimed at staving off further Israeli military strikes and limiting interference in Syria's domestic affairs. Kurds and Israelis are natural allies, but they lack a direct connection. The corridor would change that, creating a secure bridge between Israel, the Kurds, and the Druze. It would serve as a protective buffer against future massacres, regional instability, and threats to Israel's security, said Kurdistan researcher Lokman Radpay in an article on the forum's website. The corridor is in the map of the new Middle East, unveiled by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in September, Mr. Radpay added. The maps Mr. Netanyahu displayed at last September's United Nations General Assembly focused on the blessing of a land bridge between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, with Saudi Arabia at its heart, and the curse and arc of terror created by Iran in Iraq and Syria. Mr. Netanyahu's maps did not refer to the Syrian corridor. Critics charge that the proposal, dubbed David's Corridor, if implemented, would be a first step in the breakup of Syria into small, homogeneous states based on ethnicity or religion. This corridor would undermine Syria's territorial integrity, cut Syria off from Iraq and Jordan, and strip it of key strategic and military and economic advantages, said Ahmed Hamadeh, a military analyst and former Syrian army colonel. Walid Faris, a one time Lebanese American foreign policy and counterterrorism advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump, and former head of a right wing Lebanese political party, first proposed a contiguous U.S. protected land corridor that would cut across Syria and stretch from the Israeli occupied Golan Heights to predominantly Kurdish areas in the north more than a decade ago. The proposal is based on the notion that Druze and Kurds have a right to self determination, want a secular rather than an Islamist government, and are Israel's natural allies. Earlier this year, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said Israel gave unspecified positive guarantees to the rights of the Kurds. Mr. Sa'ar described the Kurds as Israel's natural allies. The forum's revival of the proposal comes barely 2 weeks after violent clashes in the predominantly southern city of As-Suwayda, involving Syrian security forces and Druze and Bedouin militias that killed hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people. Egged on by Israeli Druze and segments of the Syrian Druze community, Israel has unilaterally projected itself as the protector of the Druze, a secretive, monotheistic group based in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel, and the Kurds in the north. Israel's self declared protector status emboldened it to bar Syria's military from deploying in southern Syria as part of its undeclared strategy to emasculate its perceived foes, including the government of Mr. al-Sharaa, a one time jihadist affiliated with al Qaeda. Israel's strategy replaces the Jewish state's focus on deterrence, military superiority, and wielding a sledgehammer. The strategy evolved in the wake of Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel that killed some 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and sparked Israel's brutal assault on Gaza. Since toppling former President Bashar al Assad in December, Mr. al Sharaa has repeatedly said that he does not seek conflict with Israel and will not allow militants to attack Israel from Syrian soil. Some analysts suggest that David's corridor could be extended to Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region. Earlier this month, Israel bombed the Syrian Defense Ministry in the capital Damascus and targets in the south of the country to force a withdrawal of Syrian forces from as-Suwaida. The forces entered as-Suwaida to quell clashes between Druze and Bedouin militias. Civic society groups, including the London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, accused government-aligned groups of massacring members of the Druze sect. The Israeli strikes followed hundreds of Israeli attacks aimed at weakening the Syrian military by destroying its physical infrastructure and weaponry since Mr. al-Assad's fall. Potential Israeli efforts to create David's corridor heighten the risk of a clash with Turkey in Syria. Last week, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan warned that Turkey would view any attempt to divide Syria as a national security threat and would intervene. We are warning no group should take steps aimed at dividing Syria, Mr. Fidan said. The corridor would create territorial continuity between Israeli-occupied Syrian territory, the Druze, and the Kurds in a part of the country where thousands of Turkish troops control a buffer zone on the Syrian side of the country's border with Turkey. The buffer zone is designed to prevent the Kurds from creating an autonomous region in a federated Syria, like the Kurdish autonomous entity in Iraq. David's corridor would effectively encircle Damascus, obstruct potential Iranian efforts to regain a degree of influence in post-al-Assad Syria, create a logistics passageway for Israel, the United States, and their affiliated groups, and give Israel a say in the use of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers' crucial water resources. The forum's revival of the David's Corridor proposal came days after Hikmat al-Hitri, the only pro-Israel member of the Syrian Druze community's three-man spiritual leadership, called for the opening of a road linking as-Suwaida with areas of northern Syria, controlled by the predominantly Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. The forces served as the U.S.'s ground forces in the fight against the Islamic State. The Trump administration has since urged the group to work with Mr. al-Sharaa's government. Talks between the al-Sharaa government and the SDF have stalled because of differences over how the forces would integrate into the Syrian military. The SDF refuses to disband and integrate into the Syrian army as individuals rather than as a unified unit. In response to Mr. al-Hidri's recent appeal for assistance, the Democratic Autonomous Administration in North and East Syria, the administrator of SDF-controlled territory, said last week that based on our moral and humanitarian duty, it was sending urgent humanitarian aid to our people in Suwaida province. Fueling Israeli and Kurdish assertions that Mr. al-Sharaa has yet to break with his jihadist past, Kurdish media last week published temporary Syrian government IDs issued to Zia Muslih al-Hadani, a senior Islamic State operative killed last week by U.S. forces, and his two adult sons. As a result, the ball is in Mr. al-Sharaa's court. To counter potential Israeli plans to break up Syria, Mr. al-Sharaa will have to go beyond symbolic moves to ensure that minorities have a stake in a unified Syria. Until then, the pull of partition will linger in the background, and Israel will be waiting, said journalist and Syria analyst Michael Young. Thank you for joining me today. The rise of artificial intelligence magnifies the importance of journalists with true expertise, top-notch sourcing, and historical depth. These journalists, like me, tell and analyze in-depth stories. Their goal is to enhance their readers' and listeners' ability to form informed opinions of their own. We don't just chronicle events. Our reporting and analysis are shaped by years of on the ground coverage, expertise, and historical knowledge. In my case, I have covered geopolitics, the Middle East, and the Muslim world for decades, having been based in multiple countries, including Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, Lebanon, Kuwait, and Turkey. Hard hitting reporting and analysis that lets the chips fall where they may is even more crucial in a world of brutal wars, unimaginable humanitarian crises, and increasing authoritarianism. That is the turbulent world with James M. Dorsey's mission since its inception 15 years ago. Thousands worldwide are avid readers and listeners of the turbulent world. Join them in helping to maintain and expand the column and podcast by becoming a paid supporter. You can contribute by visiting jamesmdorsey.substack.com and choosing one of the subscription options. Thank you for your loyalty. Take care and see you soon.